Hello everyone, Raven's Librarian here with playthrough of Dawn of War, going to Mission 6. In the last mission, the Blood Ravens were investigating possible chaos involvement on the planet, and in their pursuit of that mystery, wound up running into the Eldar faction. So, now we'll see whether or not we can continue the investigation without getting interrupted by it.
Under the orders of Inquisitor Toth, the citizens of Tartarus have begun a mass exodus of the planet. Such an action can lead to disaster in the best of situations. But the reports reaching my ears are ones of planet-wide hysteria as the population makes its pilgrimage to the two main spaceports. Convoys of transports and civilians on foot are being plagued by attacks from ork forces. Stretched thin, the Imperial Guard is barely keeping order in the major population centers, sacrificing their lives long enough to hold back the green tide of the orks. They are truly warriors of the Emperor. I wish for nothing more than to be able to join them in this noble cause. But I cannot deny my duty any more than they can deny theirs. We have found proof that the forces of chaos are operating on the planet of Tartarus. Isidore has found evidence on the blasphemous altar that indicates they may be headed towards Mount Korath, an old mountain located dangerously close to an area of heavy ork activity. I have requested a regiment of Imperial Guard from Colonel Brom to help cover our approach. I regret asking when the Colonel's forces are already stretched to the breaking point, but there are greater things at stake now.
Just want to reiterate that the amount of respect and appreciation he's showing to the Imperial Guard, not unheard of from a Space Marine, not doable. This, you can see the orcs are continuing to escalate. Worst of all, it seems like a lot of them are starting to actually fuse into war bands. I never remember to check if you guys can see the clicker or not. In the green, the center of the target thing for the radar, there's the green symbols. Those are presumably the Eldar. Might be from the crab world, but I don't actually know any of the symbols they use. This was the chaos symbol.
Exalted Farseer, the humans are moving, traversing the slope as you predicted. They are walking into our trap.
Yes, but you can never ambush a Space Marine. Remember that. They expect treachery at every turn. You can only validate their suspicions.
Your orders?
We have locked the humans into this path as they have locked us into ours. They know they enter a gauntlet, and they will likely drag us into it as well. Now we play our parts, and pray that we are the better actors.
Are you certain?
Yes, the path to Mount Korath. This is where the altar said we must go. Why? Do you question my findings?
I do not question your abilities, brother librarian, but I do question their tactical sense. That mountain pass is the perfect location for an ambush.
Listen to the distrust in his voice. He probably calls you mutant behind your back, but he fears your divinity, your power. You must put the child at ease.
Okay, Siege, calm the hell down.
I do not deny that this is likely a trap, which is all the more proof that our enemy lies in this direction.
Very true, old friend. Stay alert and follow my lead. I want no mistakes.
Agreed.
For those of you who know about the setting, yes, I know that guy is not
Scouts,
actually Nazi.
are you in position?
Just a
Yes, my
joke.
lord. We have discovered the location of the first Eldar forces.
We must find a way to overcome this Eldar strike force before we can scout out a good location to stage our field operations.
Good news is we're the Space Marines, so overpowering them with sheer force is kind of what we're made for. The question is whether or not we'll be able to do it without losing a lot of guys.
By my command, attack!
Under fire,
Scouts ready. Lining up our targets.
I am the instrument of his will. At last, back to war.
Beware the alien, the mutant, the heretic. Follow me into battle.
This structure is a webway portal. The Eldar use them to quickly travel from one location to another. We must destroy
For
any
the
webway
glory
portals we
of the
find to
Emperor.
limit the Eldar's mobility.
Faith and duty.
Yes, thank you, Isidore. I did in fact play the last mission.
The enemy must be This is a good location to establish a field base. Gabriel to the Litany of Fury. Lock on my location and prepare to drop HQ. Now. On alert, brothers. The enemy must be nearby. We shall know no fear.
Yes, Lord.
Alright, well, you're not going to help with the HQ.
Yes, Lord. Yes, Lord.
Come on. Don't ambush me, don't ambush me, don't ambush me. Right,
Yes, Lord.
I'm going to be building that below the...
As you wish. I shall obey.
It's like a very convenient thing they give you.
defending objective.
So you'll be able to do it quick.
I will do as you ask.
Awaiting orders.
Beware the alien, the mutant, the heretic.
There's a few things I want to discuss in this playthrough. Hopefully I'll be able to.
We shall know no fear.
The harder the game gets, the more I start obsessing over what I'm doing and forget to actually, chat. I apologize for that. So, thing about the Eldar, you mentioned the webway, so I'll try to explain what the webway is. Eldar, I think I mentioned in the previous one, they're one of the older races in the setting, part of their joke.
Here to serve.
Right, not,
Yes, Lord. I shall obey. As you wish.
Alright, so they're starting their
Initializing
ambushes.
build protocol.
Position secure.
Goodness is they're not using their heavy guns yet.
I am the instrument of his will. I shall end you.
So the Eldar are one of the older races of the setting. They're not the oldest, but that gets into a lot of semantics. For the sake of this setting, of this game, they're one of the older ones.
And now that we have established our field base, we must continue through the mountain pass on foot. Expect heavy resistance. Make sure you move cautiously, and keep the field base protected at all times.
I'd like to do that.
Our faith holds us!
Calm down. We're still winning. Goodness says once a certain backup shows up, holding this area gets a lot easier because they take care of one of the sides of the battle.
I await your instructions. Build routine 721 initiated. Most beneficent one.
Take time with this.
Yes, Lord.
See if I can actually build this thing. And the Eldar are one of the older races.
My lord, I have arrived at your request.
We need you to cover the eastern pass. The combat that is occurring here will likely attract the orc forces
As
nearby.
you wish.
We cannot afford their interference.
I understand.
Initializing
You can count on the Imperial
protocol.
Guard to hold this pass. No orcs will get by us.
Keep me appraised of the situation. If possible, I will provide you assistance if the orcs attack.
Do not count on that. I am going to be heavily relying on you to do the hard part. You are going to be holding this side of the battle.
Moving out.
Scouts ready. We will move ahead and mark any enemy positions. I sense danger. Put it out.
Good news is on lower difficulties, these guys can handle themselves
It is
pretty
better
well.
to die for the Emperor than live for yourself.
Once they get their act together.
Purge the unclean. Moving out.
Yeah. So they're the Eldar are the old race, and a big chunk of their stories and interactions with all the other races are heavily based on their mentality of we were here first, we're the smartest, most powerful, most talented, blah blah blah. We have been around since the dawn of time, when you were all apes in your planet. One of their most common derisive ways of talking to humans is calling them monkey, which is a non-copyrighted version and way of saying monkey. Ha 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 ha. It's actually, I think, a deliberate either way of distinguishing their setting. It also might be a way of telling certain Eldar personalities apart. So if you're dealing with an Eldar, the Imperium is dealing with an Eldar, and that Eldar loves using that word, that probably means they have a very derisive view of humanity. Whereas if they actually bother to use the words human or Terran, depending on the
Follow me.
into battle. Weird glitch. If they choose to use
While
that means that
the Emperor still draw breath, there can be no peace.
that means they're not as condescending, as smug, and dismissive.
By my command, attack!
So the weird thing about the combat for the Eldar in this game is that despite their race needing to be, at a numerical disadvantage, they love
for the Emperor
using the same swarm tactics as the other players and races.
Space Marines, advance!
Submarines always get into too much trouble. I want to build
I await your instructions.
It's gonna be annoying to move them, but I'm gonna have to build this.
I will do as
Just in.
Heavy fire. The enemy is restored. Regroup.
So they're one of the older races, and a big chunk of their lore is based on that.
Scouts awaiting orders.
They've been around for a long time, and so they know a lot about the setting and the situations. They tend to be the ones that know the most about what's actually going on.
Yes, most beneficent one.
Scouts awaiting orders. Scouts charge.
This is their sniper team. I guess I should have. I'm gonna regret this.
Pull back and regroup.
Can't afford to. Come on. Got this. Just got this.
Taking heavy fire.
Yeah, I'm aware. So yeah, even though they're supposed to be a dying race, we'll get to I'll explain. In this game, they love relying on the just swarming tactic.
We will move ahead and mark any enemy positions. Gathering intelligence.
That's better.
Here to serve.
Xeno sighted.
With all
Taking damage.
Xenos is, assuming you don't know, it's the, or they haven't made it obvious, it's the alien, it's the in-universe version of Alien. They can say Alien, they do it another time. That's them blowing.
Scouts in position. We will take them down from here.
Broken!
I await your instructions.
Scouts in position. Squad morale restored! Yes, my lord. Yes, my lord.
It is better to die for the Emperor than live for yourself.
Rush the enemy position.
Ever vigilant. Heresy grows from idleness. Yes, my lord. Objective acquired.
Walk softly and carry a big gun.
At last, back to war.
So the Eldar been kicking around in this setting since pretty early on in the setting's timeline. They've been at this longer than most, and a bit. And of the factions, they're one of the more reasonable slash ordinary ones. You know, ignoring their their alienness. The idea is that
Mission accomplished.
they're not in the same vein as the orks. Well, a big chunk of their. Alright, I'm gonna need some heavy. Come on. It's over with already. If I don't make any progress, this is just gonna keep going on forever. That's all the AI does. Just swarms. Keep.
On alert, brothers. The enemy must be nearby.
Marine squad deployed.
On alert, brothers. The enemy must be nearby. Faith and duty.
At your command.
I await your instructions.
Marine squad deployed.
At your command.
The enemy is attacking.
Scouts advance. Yes, my lord.
I await
Marine
your
squad deployed.
instructions.
Try to get as many of them as possible before making my first push.
Information is taking damage.
Don't know what that's supposed to be.
Marine squad deployed.
Damn it.
Fear denies faith.
Try to make the most of this. Get this working.
At your command, fear our wrath. None shall stop us.
So an interesting point early on in this game, just something I didn't know, is why the Eldar are fighting us.
At your command. Understood.
So I've already
Awaiting orders.
talked about how they're, one of the older races, and a big stink that their race usually has is that they're very arrogant about it.
Awaiting orders.
One of their biggest flaws, purposely designed character flaws. They are an incredibly arrogant faction.
Heresy grows from idleness.
That's not unique to just them.
Heresy grows from idleness.
You can say the same about
Stay
the
vigilant,
Imperium.
brothers.
That's
The
a
enemy is attacking.
that's a big point about both
Understood.
races.
Direct Under us fire. To the enemy. Understood. For the glory of the Imperium. Awaiting orders.
They are incredibly arrogant,
Awaiting orders.
and so a lot of the conflict can stem from
Stay vigilant,
both
brothers.
groups essentially being convinced that
The enemy is attacking.
they're better equipped to do things. It comes in later in the campaign. It's like, hey, shouldn't we? The idea of working together does does pop up, but for reasons that are deep, a big part of their lore.
Your order. Cleanse. Purge.
Working
Kill.
together isn't really the default assumption that these characters will make.
What's your order?
Both humans and Eldar in this setting, are very opposed to that idea.
Information is power.
Awaiting orders.
Okay.
Attacking as ordered. Under fire.
Scouts ready.
Taking hits.
Scouts in position.
Heresy grows from idleness.
Thank the Emperor you're here. I think Command forgot about us.
How long have you been here?
About a week.
You held this position for a week? By yourselves?
Yes, my lord. We've seen some pretty freaky stuff, too. Come on. We'll show you.
Moving out. None shall stop us. Moving out. Cleanse. Purge. Kill. Orders received. Orders received, brother. Cleanse. Purge. Kill. Orders received, brother. Onward to glory! Taking damage. Space Marines attack! Engaging the enemy. Taking heavy fire.
I don't think those Imperial guards are gonna.
Purge. Kill. Orders received.
Yeah, I feel bad about that. For some reason, I was getting stuck in the river and wasn't able to help him.
For the glory of the Imperium.
Missiles can get really weird in the game.
Maintain attack formation.
Probably you can kind of tell based on what's going on in the combat sections, but
Onward to glory!
a big advantage that the Eldar have is their webway system. As the guy in the librarian at the start mentioned, this thing allows them to bring in troops from across the map.
Stay vigilant.
So it quite literally becomes a situation where if they have a webway behind you in the map, like where your base is, and you don't have actual defenses set up, or you don't actually know that they're there. Oh, guts. I really wish I had a mech.
Yes, my lord. Returning to battle. Understood. Engaging the enemy. To the rally point!
So they have a webway where they can just spawn enemies behind you. And that can lead to what's going on here, where
Attacking as ordered.
if I don't focus to where they are, I'm just gonna waste.
Taking damage.
constantly being swarmed by them.
Engaging the enemy. Objective acquired.
I await your instructions.
Really, to build this thing.
Build routine 721 initiated.
Yes, my lord.
I am the instrument of his will. By his word.
Faith is our shield.
So the Eldar in universe, they don't have the same numbers as the other races. Now, this doesn't really translate to this game, at least not as obviously, because they'll just keep throwing people at me nonstop, as if they can afford to. But in universe, that's very unlike them. Like in universe, they can't afford to just keep sending wave after wave after wave of people after me. Instead, what they'll do is that they'll use their webway system to bounce around the map, avoiding any of the actual fights that they would have to deal with, circumventing most of the dangers of fighting a group like us with our giant army, and just either sniping us, taking out our leadership, or just constantly, playing, exploiting our vulnerabilities. They can muster up the numbers they need for a big fight, but that's just...
Even in death I still serve.
It isn't their usual strategy.
To serve again.
It's something that they're just not inclined to do.
I am the instrument of his will. I am the instrument of his will. By his word.
So in this game, the strategy has to be push forward, find wherever they're hiding their webway system, and destroy it. Because the longer that thing, the longer their webways are around, the longer, they can hold out.
My brothers. I will crush those who stand before me.
Engaging the enemy. No prisoners! Engaging the enemy.
Now, the webway is essentially an ability for them to teleport, but the name is actually, it's a concept, it's actually a thing in the setting, tied to the other things that have the word warp in them. So this might be the best time to talk about the warp. Maybe not, I can't talk about the whole thing, but I should tackle some of it, so you actually know what's going on.
I will purge the unclean. Identifying targets.
Are you still trying to...
Take me into battle.
This is what I think of it. That's usually... The AI will always, like us, will usually send a builder if they want to build something in the area, even if it's...
Take me into battle.
Oh, hey, they actually committed to him.
Identifying targets. I have waited long for this day.
Yeah, the scouts might not survive this. Yeah, they're not gonna survive this. I think the mech got there in time.
To me, my brothers. Moving out, I shall end you.
So these are their melee units. Even though I can't use my melee units well, the AI does know the smart trick to, you know, if you get into melee combat and the other unit isn't made for it, like my guys who are not equipped with the melee weapons, then they can make very short work of my guys.
I will be there soon.
Simply by virtue of having a different weapon skill that they're not accounting for. So thankfully on normal difficulty, the Imperial Guard actually do a decent job of holding against.
Here to serve.
Scouts awaiting orders.
I'd be in a lot of trouble if I actually had to handle those attacks as well. It's very fortunate for me that that doesn't happen on this difficulty.
I await your instructions.
Captured.
Initializing build protocol.
I need to worry about the space.
At last, back to war.
So the webway is it's an ability the Eldar figured out to use the warp. Warp is the concept that allows for space travel in this setting faster than light. It's basically another dimension tied to theirs, to the real set, to our physical world.
The enemy is attacking.
And it is where a lot of the supernatural ideas that otherwise shouldn't be in this setting can be, because the warp is essentially a mind-made manifest. So
I have waited long for this day to war.
concepts of the mind actually have a lot more weight in the warp than they do in the physical world. Oh, that's their big gun. What he said. Well, I'm about to...
Commencing attack. Fall back and regroup.
I am the instrument of his will. To me, my brothers.
So, in the warp, the things afflicted of the mind take a lot more power and can cause a lot more to occur. And because of the rules of the warp, time and space are a lot more malleable in that reality than, of course, in our physical reality. So what happens is people figured out how to go from our reality to the warp. And by doing that, they found how to cut the time, the distance between space, by a huge margin. Because again, those time and space aren't the same there than they are here. By doing that, they were able to make sure that space travel was actually possible. Because now that you had actual... the gaps that exist in... that we know exist in reality, which do apply in the 40k setting, are no longer insurmountable. Because if you can get into the warp, you can... a space travel in real space that would take hundreds of years, even with the fastest physical, limitations that exist. Now you can do it in almost half the time. Not even half the time. Sometimes it'll literally, you can bounce around from years to days, weeks. I don't have an exact number. I don't know if one exists in the setting, like there's an actual comparison. But in general, the idea is that once you figure out that gap of time, once you figure out how to get into the warp and get back out, that's a key point. You need to be sure you can get back out. Then you will be able to avoid the impossibility. You're able to actually create a civilization a spacefaring civilization, because you've now gotten past one of the biggest hurdles, which is simply having the ability to get from point A to point B in a realistic amount of time. That isn't forever. So the Eldar, they were one of the first to figure out this, and they mastered warp travel to the point where they were able to create a sort of in between pocket dimension. I might be getting the terms wrong, but the webway is something that connects to a form of space that's part of the warp, but it doesn't suffer from all of the other things that make the warp the warp. And that's something that's tied to the Chaos faction, and it's a big part of why traveling through the warp isn't that simple as just push a button, and it's also not something you do without massive repercussions, even if you are accustomed to it. So that's something that the Imperium constantly has to deal with. And whereas the Eldar, by using the webway system, they're able to bypass that. And it extends to the point, at least in game, where they can do things like creating these webway gates that allow them to just point and click from one side of a planet to another. Other factions, like the Imperium and Chaos, could theoretically do the same thing, in that they also have warp technology that allows them to teleport. But again, in their case, they're doing it with the warp as it is, and that runs with a lot of gambits. So the Imperium has warp technology, but if they use that technology, there's always a chance that the people who use it just disappear. This can obviously lead to some situations of plot armor where certain characters will actually use this technology in numerous occasions. And despite the statistical average indicating that they should have at least once been completely screwed, they're main characters, so they're able to avoid the worst case scenario, despite how many times they do it. But in universe, that's the exception. The idea is that if you use the warp, you run the risk of getting lost or getting trapped because of the things that make the warp what it is. But the Eldar, they don't have to worry about that. They have some other concerns that they have to take into account, and there might be like some limitations to the webway that I'm not recalling right now. But in general, thanks to their technology, their use of the webway system, they're able to exploit space and travel to a point that almost none of the other races can.
To me, my brothers.
And that's something that allows them to take advantage
I will crush those who stand
to a far greater extent than the others. And that leads into a lot of their tech strategies and a lot of their fighting style in gameplay and in the setting. Whereas a race like the Imperium has to rely on sometimes blind luck. They have to take into account the averages. They have to be like, all right, if we travel through the warp now, we should get there within a few days, but there's always a chance that our ship will get lost and will be late by weeks, maybe a month or a year. But the Eldar, they can be like, all right, we got to get here. Do we have a webway? Because if they don't have a bridge, they can't get there. They can't just point and click on anywhere in space. But because they're an old race that has been around for millennia, in their case, the excuse is usually that they've been to most of the galaxy. So getting to one place or another isn't, for them, it's almost never, oh, we need to we need to go to a planet and we need to build a portal. For them, it's usually, all right, we need to find the door in our webway that leads to that planet because we've been there, like, we were there thousands of years ago.
Yes, my lord. Stay vigilant from
Even
taking
in
damage.
death I still serve. I am the instrument of his will. Faith is eternal. I am the instrument of his will. I am ready to serve again.
Honestly surprised. I have to assume it's because of these two, because I'm genuinely surprised that these guys are still
Direct us to the
hanging
enemy.
on.
Even in death I still serve. Identifying targets.
Taking hits.
Your end.
What's your order?
Command me.
Yes, my lord.
Your end is at hand.
And so a lot of the Eldar strategies and overall method of operating tends to rely on very precise attacks and strategic ambushes. Because part of their lore revolves around the simple fact that they don't have the numbers that other races have, like the Imperium, so they can't afford to just throw countless waves of themselves onto an enemy and just hope it all works out.
Even in death I still serve. Moving out. It is better to die for the Emperor than live for yourself.
If they deem something truly valuable, truly necessary, they can and will commit ridiculous numbers to something.
His will be done. As you command.
But in general, they'll try to avoid that. Nope.
At your command. Orders received.
For the Emperor, I am ready to serve again. Your end is
Initiating attack protocol 23. Making heavy fire. Engaging the enemy. Understood.
Oh, so I recalled the intro. So I should talk about stuff from the beginning.
Cleanse, purge, kill.
command me.
See, this is ridiculous from the Eldar perspective. Like, this would be ridiculous even if this was, like, even what I'm doing is ridiculous by the Imperial, by the Space Marine standards. Tank make it. Come on. Always gotta be mindful of where the tank is.
Taking heavy fire.
Alright, so clearly I forgot, I missed one of the portals. Somewhere. That or they just built another one.
Yes, my lord. Attacking. Attacking as ordered.
Even in death I still serve.
Strategic point identified.
Just to be clear, the Eldar as a faction generally can't afford to do stuff like this that they're doing in gameplay terms. Like, they can't just keep throwing wave after wave of us at the enemy. We'll win eventually. We can just keep making more of them.
Your instructions.
Predator tank here. His will be done.
Fear denies faith. Consolidating position on the objective.
So in the beginning cutscene, the Eldar leader, she made a comment of the Space Marine mentality, where she's like, you can't really ambush a Space Marine because they always expect you to perform an ambush. That's really funny in the setting because A, it's true, but also B, it's easy to expect an ambush if you are genuinely constantly getting ambushed. Like, the moment the Space Marines knew they were fighting the Eldar in the previous mission is the moment in which the Space Marines just sort of accept the fact that they are going to get ambushed over and over and over again. Because that really is the Eldar's, like, default strategy. So it is very humorous for the Eldar leader to be like, oh yeah, but you know, they're always so paranoid, you know, they're such a paranoid race. They're always expecting you to do something like this, so you just kind of have to play along and humor them. As if it isn't precisely because they love to ambush. Not love, that's kind of a condescending, like, again, something they kind of need to do, not necessarily something they want to do. Once I have enough firepower, I don't really need to play this so cautiously.
Initiating attack protocol 23.
These tanks are amazing. And these things, even though they're really good at breaking my shooters, because they get them stuck into melee, they are not so good at, you know, fighting vehicles. These things are better for that.
We will crush the enemies of the Imperium.
But the really powerful anti-gun thing is, you know, is the one with the giant crystal.
Marine squad deployed. The enemy is attacking.
So that's one of the things where the Eldar just, you know, they naturally default to this strategy of ambushing and flanking.
We will crush the enemies of the Imperium.
Gotta remember to tell the AI to do something about it, otherwise they just keep sitting around. But these are their speedy vehicles. Really good for ambushes.
Cleanse, purge, kill. Moving out.
Just the path, yeah, the path.
None shall stop. The enemy is attacking.
That's one of the two things from the other thing is when the semi-confrontation with the librarian. The guy in his head, the warlock, he mentioned something that's like, he probably calls you mutant behind your back.
I have awoken.
In one of the previous missions, when the librarian first met the Imperial Guard, I mentioned that it might be out of character for the Imperial Guard to be very calm and respectful with the librarian. You know, it might have to do with the librarian being a space marine, so that's sort of like the guy's reacting to him as a space marine, not as a librarian. So librarians They are space marines with psychic abilities and training. And so psychics in this setting of 40k are humans and any other race that has psychics. Any living being that has a deeper connection to the warp than most. So the warp, like I said, it's basically the realm of the mind, but in universe it's also treated essentially the same thing as being the realm of the soul, because the two things, psychic energy and your soul energy, are sort of treated as interchangeable.
We will crush the enemies of the Imperium.
I might have overestimated my strength.
Returning to battle.
Predator at your command.
Tell them to hold their ground for now.
Predator tank here.
Awaiting orders.
Predator at your command.
For the glory of the Imperium.
So the warp is treated as both the realm of souls, magic, so on and so forth, and it's the realm of the psychic mind. So it's connected to emotions, thoughts, and everything else in between. So some beings, usually are organic beings, humans, the Eldar, orks, everything else. Some will be born with a deeper connection to the warp, to that realm, and that allows them to basically pull energy that is tethered to the warp, because the warp is connected to their reality. So they're able to pull energy from it, connect to it, and from there comes stuff akin to magic. Like I can perform witchcraft, so on and so forth. It's in reality it's all stuff connected to the warp, but for the sake of semantics, that is essentially what they're doing. So sorcerers, warlocks, mages, and librarians sort of all kind of fit a general collective group that is the ones that are tied to the warp. So a part of the 40k setting for the humans is that because of things related to their backstory, the world building, they are a deeply paranoid and overzealous race. And even though, practically speaking, they need stuff like the warp, mages and the like.
Faith is our shield. Squad morale restored. Faith is our shield. Cleanse, purge, kill. Fear denies faith. Understood.
Faith is eternal. Take me into battle.
So they are despite the fact that, things tied to the warp are very much necessary for their Imperium to even exist. As a culture, they are distrustful of things that are different. The whole humanity thing breeds a very us versus everything else society. And so humans that are able to tap into the warp, they're not seen as, people with this affliction. They're not seen as, special people that now have a role that they'll have to figure out. No. They're treated as the others of the setting. And the only reason most of them aren't killed on sight is because the Imperium has found a need for them. but that need hasn't outweighed the general population's misgivings about them. And so now again, this is a very massive, very complex setting. So there's all kinds of people in this setting, and all kinds of different, and within a certain mandatory margin, because there's only so much leeway you'll get in a setting that has to have this limitation and has to have its rules, so things are consistent and things make sense.
Awaiting orders.
Outside of that,
Onward to glory.
being part of the set of the Imperium leads to your distrust of mutants. So the librarian having that warlock dude get in his head and use that idea that, oh, he probably calls you mutant behind his back. That's absurd given their personal connection to each other. They're meant to be brothers in arms. But in this setting, that isn't actually that outlandish of a claim. I should have pulled back the dreadnought. They really do not want me to get there.
Taking hit.
No, they brought in the backup.
The red vessel. Initiating attack protocol 23. We stand ready. None shall stop us.
Even in death I still serve. I will crush those who stand before me. I have waited long for this day.
Marine squad deployed.
So the idea that this librarian would be convinced, that he's being viewed as an other behind his back isn't that outlandish, because it's something that really does occur in this setting. Even among Space Marines, there are a lot of chapters that have this sort of, yeah, we need you, to do your weird witchcrafty nonsense, so we can do the thing we're made to do. But we don't like what you do, and we don't trust what you do.
None shall stop us. Initiating attack protocol 23.
I hate a lot of people.
For the glory of the Imperium. For the glory of the Imperium. Orders received. Fear our wrath.
You done? Or do I need to bring? Well,
Understood.
they're trying to build another web, another gate.
Fear our wrath. Orders received. Moving out.
No.
Understood. Moving out. Initiating attack.
This is where all the vehicles come from.
Objective
Done.
acquired.
Doing the side missions is too much of a hassle in this part.
We are still unearthing more Eldar explosives and demolition charges, but we dare not move them. We replace their triggering mechanisms, however. That is all I care to do with such xenotech.
Alien.
Is this a trap?
No. By the placement of the charges, it is likely they plan to collapse this area, burying the marker and anyone near it.
They failed. Isidore, study the marker and see where it leads us next.
Captain, Inquisitor Toth has arrived.
Of course he has.
Timing.
Yes, Captain, it is an impressive sight. But I never claimed Chaos had never set foot on this planet before. I said that if something were here, the impending warp storm would eliminate that threat. Best would remain to share its fate.
And as I explained, Inquisitor, the Blood Ravens will remain until the last possible moment. Until that happens, in 2 or 3 days hence, I plan on pursuing this riddle.
Captain, I do not presume to question your decisions concerning the Blood Ravens. But when it comes to employing the Colonel's Imperial Guard in your quest...
My quest? Yet again you accuse me of pursuing my personal interests. It is my duty, and yours, to expunge any scent of heresy or chaos.
You overstep yourself.
As do you, Inquisitor. It is not the Colonel's Imperial Guard. Their lives belong to the Emperor. It is by his mandate and will that I use the Imperial Guard against the forces of disorder and elevate them in the glory of holy battle.
I see now that coming here was a mistake. If you are set on a path that will lead you to destruction, I can do nothing to stop you. But I won't allow you to drag us down with you. By inquisitorial edict, I am taking control of the planet Tartarus. All requests for planetary resources, including its military, will go through me. Captain, from this point on, you and your men are on your own.
So, as I mentioned in the previous mission, he can in fact do that if he wants to. Like, if there was another Inquisitor or an equally high-ranking position from the Imperium here, then that person might be able to veto or, ignore his order. But the Space Marine captain can't overstep here. There is obviously a danger that the Space Marines have enough military force to just force the issue, but keep in mind, in that scenario, what the implication would be that the Space Marines would start fighting the Imperial Guard. That does happen. In fact, that can happen in the games you can play of Dawn of War. It happens in the 2 sequels, after, not the next one, but the ones after that one. But in the whole point here is that we just went through an entire mission where I didn't really focus on showing that too much. But while we were doing all that mess with the Eldar, the Imperial Guard group that we brought was genuinely, literally holding the line against a ever annoyingly not stopping wave of orks. Like, if it hadn't been for them, I would have probably either lost or just wasted even more time getting through this. So, him taking away the Imperial Guard support is a big loss for the Blood Ravens, though it's not as crippling as it would be for a different Space Marine chapter, because the Blood Ravens here at least have their own ships, weaponry, they have machines that they have the people to build and make the machines. Not every Space Marine chapter has that, and they have their own ships. That's something he mentions in the previous missions, where he offers his own ships to help escort civilians and resources out of the planet. Some Space Marine chapters don't have their own ships, so if the Imperial Guard factions in the area just don't give them ships, those Space Marines are just kind of stuck. So that would be even more crippling. Not the situation for them, but again, this whole mission, you have that Imperial backup that you can rely on, and when that's taken away from you, that means that in the next mission that to come, we are on our own. That's not impossible, but it is a loss. The other thing, and this is very quick, when he mentions the idea of the Emperor, I don't know if I've made it clear by now. The Emperor is a real person that was and is technically the supreme ruler of the Imperium. But for reasons of the setting, he's not active in the way that he can't actually give orders or issue commands. So this is a society that has a ruler, but that ruler doesn't actually have an active part in the ruling of the set. So instead, there are other people who run things, and from that, technically, no one person is actually in charge anymore, leads to a lot of the infighting and just bickering that comes from this. Like, again, both the Inquisitor and the Space Marine Captain are supposed to answer to the same guy, the Emperor. He's not around, so both technically are his ultimate authorities because each one was given a very big role when the guy was around. But now, each group simply presumes that they are the final say in matters that the end point. And that's what again leads to the conflicts of the factions. No one, and also this kind of burying the lead here, but future missions will also show, what the situations that breed a lot of distrust in these factions. So you're seeing it with the librarian and the inquisitor. So there's a lot of reasons for why these factions don't just work together. In the next mission, I'll try to talk a bit more about a few more details about the Eldar, but I want to save a lot of it for the future campaigns where we actually get to play as them. Same with the orcs and same with the other factions, but I'll figure out something to talk about. Hopefully you'll enjoy it. Goodbye, everyone. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.